The Questions Log, Week 38. Time, being an illusion, is infinitely malleable. It can be stretched, it can be contracted. What shapes it is the mind. Tell you a story, very old story. Once upon a time, a wise man dreamed he was a butterfly. When he awoke, he had a strange realization. He realized that he didn't know if he was a man who had been dreaming he was a butterfly, or a butterfly dreaming he was a man. School's out. This is 52 Pickup.
Hello, welcome to 52 Pickup, a podcast about the greatest comic you've never heard of. I'm Gita Jackson, and that's who I am, and I'm joined, as always, by professional comic books expert, Alex Jaffe. Alex, how are you?
Oh, gang. This is the one, isn't it?
It's a sad one.
This is the one.
This is the one where we all got really sad. I got sad rereading it today, right before the show. It is beautifully written, but it is always hard to say goodbye.
It's something you might have seen the writing on the wall for since the first weeks of this comic, and you know it's coming, and it's been tougher and tougher as we've gotten there. It's just so heartbreakingly beautifully paced, the way we see this story play out, and like, you don't want it to happen, but it has to happen, and here we are.
Yeah, it is. Homie was doomed by the narrative.
Absolutely.
That's it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, this is the way this story would go. If we are human beings, love to make up stories because stories make sense. And this is one of the rhythms of a narrative that just makes sense.
This issue is the reason that I frequently compared 52 when I was slightly younger to Le Mort d'Arthur.
Oh.
Yeah.
It is about the end of everything and change
Yeah.
and what comes after that. That's so true.
This is a really special one. You wouldn't know that by the cover, which just has these, like, images Spawn villains on it.
Yeah. It's a
I
pretty
don't know what's
sick
going
cover,
on there.
honestly. Okay.
Yeah.
It's, they do look like Spawn villains, but it's the
Yeah.
horsemen that are introduced later in the issue.
Yeah.
They're standing atop the top of the world, and it's crackling underneath them.
We can briefly talk talent. Some of our usual suspects here. We got Joe Bennett and Jack Jadson on art. Colors are by Hi-Fi Design, which is a coloring studio that's been in operation since 1998. We got 3 out of the 4 horsemen looking like they're about to drop the hottest album of 2006. 2007 at this point, I guess. We got death. We got pestilence. We got war. Where's famine? Don't worry about it. It's probably fine.
Literally, just don't worry about it. It's fine.
Yeah. Just didn't show up. Yeah. These designs, I do not know who created these designs, if it was like J.G. Jones, literally the cover artist, or somebody else. But I love the super techno robot look on War.
Yeah.
And the, like, cow skull and black wings, Final Fantasy optional boss aesthetic of death here.
Yep.
Yeah.
He has 2 wings on the cover, but from the angle, it does look like he's going one-wing angel mode.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The Latin chorus is just about to set in.
Sephiroth.
Yeah. Etc.
Yeah.
The Horsemen have come. I don't know why this is the Vic Sage issue. I don't know why this tiny subplot within the comic got the cover spot, but I guess it's because these guys are gonna be important later, and this is a marker of where we're gonna go in the last quarter of this comic. Here are our bad guys.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also, I think that they unfortunately used the cover that would have been appropriate for this
the toe tag
earlier.
cover.
The toe tag cover is, I understand wanting to like bait and switch a little bit, but it lends, like, most of the issue is not about what's on the cover for this one.
That's correct. Yeah, it would be weird to do 2 Death of Vic Sage covers. They kind of shot their wad, I guess.
I was going to use that phraseology, but then I decided against it, but then you did. So thank you.
Somebody had to.
It's the only way to accurately describe they ejaculated early on this cover. Yes.
Yeah, if neither of us had said it, the listener at home would be stewing like, why aren't they talking about jizz?
You mean the musical form from the Star Wars universe?
That's Jats now, actually. I'm sorry to say.
Sorry, that sounds stupider. Come on, Disney, come on!
Boop-a-dap. I'm doing everything I can not to talk about this issue because I might cry.
No, this is the first time Alex Jaffe was like 1 minute late. I'm always 15 minutes late to the podcast recording. Literally every time we sit down to record, I'll be there in 5 and it's 15 minutes every single time.
You need to make tea.
I do always. I got new tea today.
Oh,
and
yeah?
I'm so fucking excited. But it comes in very cute packaging and they have cute names like Princess and Tea Time. It's really sweet. But that is not why we're gathered here today.
No, we are gathered here today to celebrate the life of a loved one.
Yes.
We get this heart-rending scene as Vic and Renee are trekking in a truck up the side of Nanda Parbat, where she's just injecting a skeletal Vic with morphine and insisting to the reader that she's not crazy for doing this and that there is a chance that this will work. Just nakedly ignoring the obvious that nothing good can come of this.
She's literally just emotionally triggered by this experience, right? She's had so much death and she's experienced so much loss in her life. She has lost another partner in her previous history, and she wants to feel like she has done everything she could. She doesn't want to accept this just yet, and it will take her a long time, even after this issue, to accept what this death means to her and who she will become after it. But it's weirdly, even though she is in such a deep state of denial, this is the healthiest thing she ever possibly could have done in reaction to this also. Her other coping mechanisms are all very poor.
She's not drinking about it. She's not fucking about it.
Exactly.
And that's an improvement.
She is at least looking at what she's upset about right in the face, which is something that she does not do historically. Every time she has a problem, she runs away from it.
Right.
And here she is doing that, but it's more like she's running with him and trying to do something for him because she feels grateful to him and she doesn't want this relationship to end.
And it's something that beautifully dovetails with the entire mission statement and career of the question, where even though what you set out to do usually ends in failure, you gotta do the thing. It's why you go out and campaign for a candidate that you believe in, that you know is going to lose. It's why you make those phone calls. Every one of us has this cause that we know we can't possibly logically achieve, but to give up and do nothing about it is to ensure that.
Yes, you have to ask the question.
Right!
Even if you don't know what the answer will be, and even if the answer will disappoint you.
Exactly. It's incumbent on all of us, no matter how hopeless it is, to at least try. And that is what Renee is doing here. And that is why Renee defied Kate when she was like, take a step back. This is hopeless. Because even if it is, you gotta do it. And in
these early scenes, day 1, week 38, she is in Tibet and she is surrounded by people that don't speak English, and Charlie is having a really tough time. He is not lucid, doesn't recognize her, won't eat, and she cannot find any more help to help her help him. They have a limited amount of the treatment that he needs for his cancer, or at least morphine, it seems also. And she is trying to make the best of it, but she can already tell this is going to be really, really, really difficult. And guess what? It only gets worse from here.
Yeah, all recognition of who she is has completely vanished from his eyes as he, smacks the soup she's trying to feed him out of his face. We get our title drop, Breathless, in this very, early 2000s kind of MTV font. When they're about to put on some new metal act.
It's totally a new metal font. That's true.
Yeah.
It's real, like, was it Creeper font on
Chiller. Yeah.
Chiller. That's the name of it. It's Chiller. That's what it
Yeah.
looks like to me. An attempt to look handwritten, but handwritten by a guy who's super pissed.
Yeah, it's something you'd see on a lot of merch in the Vans Warped tour.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're making jokes
absolutely.
about fonts here on 52
This is
Pickup.
a millennial podcast. Get out of here.
It sure
You don't
is.
respect millennial culture.
No. What is there in millennial culture worth respecting, really?
I mean, honestly, a lot, but let's not.
Okay.
We threw some great parties. That's all I'm going to say. We had some great fucking music. We had some incredible movies. And there's a lot of really interesting stuff that's coming out of millennials now as we have moved into our period of actually having some kind of financial stake in the world for as long as the world still exists.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm not going to get too into that. But I will say, yeah, are one of the best bands that's ever existed in the history of the world.
Okay.
So day 2, the next plot line that takes up the most space in this issue is somehow Oolong Island, which I think is the pairing for this issue because this is so wacky and zany and so tonally different from the intense. You need the break from this. I've been watching The Pit on Max, which is an incredible show from it's a medical drama, but 24 basically, where each hour is an hour in the ER. And every time something really upsetting happens, the very next thing that happens is something that's funny. And that's been really, really helpful for me because in a hospital emergency room, people are constantly dying.
Yeah, it's not great.
Nobody likes that. Yeah. But Oolong Island is nice because this time around, I picked up on some things I didn't pick up on my first couple of readings of Oolong Island. So they're opening here and they're wondering, who's ordered all these extra thermometers? That's crazy. Why do we have so many thermometers? Everybody's too on drugs and in their mad scientist pose to understand what thermometers are full of.
Right.
Do you know what thermometers are full of, Alex Jaffe?
Could it possibly be the only metal that's liquid at room temperature?
You know, who's to say? And despite the fact that he's off his meds, Dr. Morrow seems very chipper.
Yeah.
And very pleased with himself.
Will Magnus, sorry.
They all have such silly names, and I haven't seen them for a very long time.
Yeah.
But he's very chipper. He's very pleased with themselves. None of them still don't really know what they're building towards. Yeah. And that's what Magnus is trying to ask here. It's like, what is the purpose of getting all the mad scientists together here? What are they building? What are we doing?
Yeah,
what's the
why
war?
are we getting coked off our asses to, like, dream about doomsday devices over here?
Yeah, exactly. And that's when we get back to everyone's favorite plot point, the Bible of Crime, the crime Bible.
I want to point out that Will Magnus is just eating can over can of cold beans throughout this entire sequence.
Yeah.
There's just like a pile of cans in his room that they're just like kind of laying waste. And I got to ask you, Gita, what are food cans typically made of?
Oh, boy. Oh, that's so interesting.
There you go.
Oh, man. It sounds like Dr. Will Magnus has a card up his sleeve.
Crazy like a fox. Hey, remember that gold watch that went missing a few weeks ago? What was that about?
That's crazy. What are all these things made out of? That's so weird. I love this plot line, and I like it so much because of the thing that is about to happen right now, which is they are what's his name, Chang-Zu, Egg Fu is reading from the crime Bible, and this is how you know this part is written by Grant Morrison. They went straight for Apocalypse, which is the only cool stuff that's come out of the crime Bible, is cool series of proper nouns that relate to apocalypse.
Right.
Yeah.
They're talking about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, but it's spelled the funky Jack Kirby way. These are the 4 horsemen of that apocalypse.
Yeah. And so they give a whole bunch of like proper nouns, the blah, blah, blah. The image of the 3 horsemen that appear on the cover are there. And they ask, where's Famine? Apparently Famine rode ahead and is already there. So that's interesting.
Famine already left. We don't know what happened to Famine.
Yeah, we don't know what happened to famine, but death, war, and pestilence are there. And what they say when they leave the portal is Black Adam.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the other scientists are not super cool about this development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a clever allusion to the fact that the hierarchy of power in the DC universe is about to change.
Yeah. You know, I tried to watch that movie.
Oh, yeah?
I was in a hotel room with my husband and it was on. So we tried to watch it and we made it like half an hour into it.
I have not watched it yet because I know we will have to watch it for this podcast.
We will have to watch it for this podcast. But if you want to listen to us talk about any movies related to this comic or DC Comics in general, you do have to subscribe because we are not doing this for free.
Yeah, I do not give away my opinions about DC movies for free. You're going to have to go behind the paywall for that. Which
Aftermath.site/products.
Subscribing to Aftermath.site. What is it, $7 a month?
It's like $7 a month to get all the bonus episodes.
That's like nothing.
It literally is nothing. You could listen to them all for 1 month and then end your subscription if you wanted to. But there's like a lot of cool things that we do in Aftermath. So why not stick around? But I have seen about half an hour of it and it was not good. David wanted to keep watching it because he loves watching movies as a bit. And it's like, but I want to like leave the hotel room, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not very good, but the hierarchy of power in the DC universe did change.
It did change. He was right about that.
The Rock was no longer a part of it.
It changed away from him, but it did in fact change.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah. And one of my favorite bits in this whole egg foo situation is that this is clearly not a joke to Veronica Cale anymore. She's kind of freaked out by all this. Like, oh, wait, we're like actually doing evil end of the world shit. But I live in the world. Yeah, that's a problem.
The realization that is on all of the scientists' faces. Tio Amaro, Will Magnus, and Veronica Cale. Will Magnus looking astoundingly sane with the pipe in his mouth, I'll also say. The three of them in this panel do seem like they've realized that ending the world means ending all of the hedonistic things they enjoy.
Yeah.
So there's the rub, unfortunately. Right. But now we have to go back to Renee's unending miserable quest.
We get this incredible double page splash, just really demonstrating the vastness of this alpine landscape as Renee just trudges Vic's body through the snow, inching closer and closer to Nanda Parbat, while Vic just babbles almost incoherently, making some veiled allusions to his death and rebirth in the first 2 issues of Denny O'Neill's The Question, which, if you take anything away from this show, read The Question after this. It's a good book.
Really? You like The Question, Jaffe? I didn't know
that. I always tell people you got to read 52, then read The Question, and then read 52 again. And this is one of those moments that really pays off. I want to call special attention to the way the artist here draws the wind. Just the effect that they have, like the colorist has over just this like these like windswept currents really make you feel just like the harsh, biting environment of what they're going through in a really effective way.
Yeah, it's white whorls that are just overlaid on top of this image, and you really feel how intense that wind must be, how cold it must be. It does look like fucking miserable what Renee is putting herself through, but she has a tendency to punish herself when she feels bad. This is just a different method of punishment, right? Her early version of self-punishment looked enjoyable because she disguised it as hedonism. Yeah. But it's not hedonism. It's trying to drink yourself to death, you know? Trying to put yourself in enough complicated or violent situations that eventually one of them will kill you. And here, she is putting herself through this in order to hopefully help someone live. But I don't think she actually accepts that she is going to live and he is not going to live until the end of the issue.
Yeah. This is the moment. She's like, she's talking to herself, narrating as she has been throughout this whole thing about she can't, bring herself to reckon with the fact that she's going to lose another partner. We just like day after day in the snow, she's just consulting whoever she can. Like, how do I get to Nanda Parbat? Shit, I flew here last time. I don't know how to get here on foot. So she's just like desperately trying to communicate with anyone who just doesn't know the language, grasping at whatever straw she can. Something I picked up on this read through that I hadn't before is that we get some allusions here to the butterfly dream, which is a famous Chinese text from like the 3rd century BC, which goes back to those first couple issues of the question, the idea of like a monk who dreams he's a butterfly, but is it the butterfly dreaming the man or the man dreaming the butterfly? And what I didn't put together until this read through is that the Chinese philosopher who wrote that parable is named Chuang Tzu. I don't know what that's about.
Huh.
What was Morrison doing there?
Drugs. Sorry, that's the answer to that question. So.
Yes. I don't know how these plots are meant to connect, but that can't be a coincidence.
No, it can't be. What's also interesting is the connection to ritual magic in Hermann Hesse, right?
Yeah.
Hermann Hesse, who said that in order to be born, we are like chicks in an egg, and we must crack the world's shell. Chuang Tzu is a big fucking egg.
He's a big fucking egg. That's true.
Right. So
you can't deny that. Say what you will about him. He's a big fucking egg.
He's a big fucking egg. Say what you will about Chuang Tzu, but he is an egg, actually. Yeah. Gosh. So what's also interesting about that is that the butterfly or sort of insect imagery also does not end, right?
I'm feeling so attacked right now. I'm literally neurodivergent and an egg.
Gosh. But as we move into day 4, we go back to Steelworks. And this is the only other interlude before it's just Renee Montoya in emotional pain.
Before it's pain time again.
Yeah. And, but the butterfly imagery does not end here.
Yeah.
And the reference, because they are talking about the reign of the Superman again in the St. Crispin. Well, they said they're at Steelworks, but the doctors from St. Crispin are there, which is whatever.
Yeah, that's a good note. I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
But yeah, these are those doctors. We got Kala Vesti here. We got Dr. Midnight here. I think these are the Steelworks guys. This is the group that we've seen John putting together in like these little stolen scenes between the bigger plot lines.
And they're still investigating like how Lex Luthor has control over the superpowers. So it assumes that he'd use his connection to look at some of the cadavers from this incident. That makes sense to me. Okay, now that works out. But what's happened is Natasha has planted a bug, which is a literal mechanical bug. Yeah. On one of Beast Boy. On Garth.
A mecha dragonfly.
Yeah.
So some real Ted Cord-ass tech here.
It does look butterfly-esque. The wings are not quite the correct shape, but it is, like, from the back does give you butterfly, which is sort of an interesting thing that I hadn't thought about. But she is about to be a mold for them, essentially, but she is not quite sure. I think that Steel knows that, or, if she gets caught by Luthor and he warns her not to get caught, that this will be the end of her life.
What we're seeing here is as one partnership is coming apart, the one of Vic and Renee, another one is coming together. That John and Natasha, who have been at odds since the first issue of this story, are finally collaborating on the same page with each other and are going to be moving together in the same story from this point out.
It's a nice beat to interrupt this other beat. Also because it's more positive and gives another storyline a little bit more forward motion. We get to see some resolution from what happened in the previous couple issues with the reign of the Superman. But now we turn the page.
Do we have to turn the page?
Well, if we sat here forever, then the comic would never end. And then maybe somewhere in this comic, Vic would still be alive and Renee would still be taking him to Nanda Parbat. But
they have to move on.
You have to turn the page.
You have to turn the page. All right.
It's day 5.
Let's do it. It's day 5. We got Vic is reduced to no longer making coherent words. Just a haunting death rattle of just like air escaping his body as his organs shut down.
So many of these panels are just Renee as small as possible and the giant expanse of white space that are these mountains that she's trekking through. It looks painful and arduous, and you also understand how little she is in just the scheme of everything happening around them. This is one woman's incredibly desperate plea to the universe to not have to witness death again. Now we move on to day 6, which is even worse.
Trekking through the just like brow-beating snow. It's going so strong that you can't even stand up in it, but she's just shouting to the winds and the gods and to Charlie just to let her keep going, to do whatever she can. In just like this senseless but deeply resonant act of desperation, just to keep any kind of warmth in Vic's body. She unravels his pseudoderm mask from the pouch in his belt and tries to keep the insulation on his face that way and tries to bind it to his skin. And we basically, in this scene, get to see Vic be the question one last time. And it's enough to bring back this last moment of lucidity, which, I don't know, you're watching a lot of hospital shows, and I've come to learn that in the moments before death, there's very often this spike where a person seems to be getting better until everything just crashes out completely. And I think that's what we're seeing here in miniature, where she's strapped this mask back on Vic's face as she's just, her lips are cracked and she's, the narration is filled with desperation. And we get this 9-panel grid, harkening back to the first issue of 52. And in fact, Steve Ditko's earliest work with the question, as it's wrapped around his face and he sputters back to life one last time and says, "Get this thing off my face," hard enough to breathe as it is. And just Renee gets this impossible gift where she gets to see her friend as himself one last time. And they finally come back to addressing the question he's been asking her since the very beginning. Who are you? And he tells her, it's a trick question. It's never been about who you are. It's about who you're going to become. And as he loses his life in her arms, literally on the steps of Nanda Parbat, just literally feet away from what could have been redemption, we see that the indentation she's made of dragging his body through the snow has left a question mark in the ground.
Comics are really good sometimes.
Comics are so good.
Comics are literally so good sometimes. That's the question. Right?
Yeah.
That's the question of all of our lives, is who are we going to become? What's important to us? What makes us ourselves in a metaphysical sense? And it is the great mystery of life that you will never, ever solve. But the point of living in many ways is to continue asking that question.
It's too big for me to even talk about, even though, it's kind of my job to talk about this right now.
Yeah.
I love it so much because it's very clear that what happened here is that this is part of a much larger conversation of like, we've been doing superhero deaths for 50 years, more even. Like even with the Booster Gold issue, the Frank Grimes issue, where like the skeleton of Booster is left in Superman's arms. Everyone is like, that's bullshit. How do you make a character's death actually land? And the answer that Greg Rucka delivers here is the same as the answer that he gave earlier when he was like, how do we reckon with Booster and Ralph Dibny with him failing to predict Sue's death? The same thing is just confront it absolutely directly. Treat it as real. Don't treat it as a comic book. Treat these characters as human beings. And it's to the credit of everybody involved that they drew on their own personal experiences of what it was like to lose a loved one. This isn't a superhero comic going off the shelves. This is somebody you care. This is charting the loss of a person you care about.
I could not put it better myself. It's how do we make scenes like this matter? How do you make it so it feels like no one who comes after you would want to bring this character back? It's treat them like a real person and have other people react to them and have other people actually experience what you go through when you lose someone. And then even if the comic book thing of the world is, the timelines are rearranged and blah, 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 it happens and this character comes back, you will always have this fictional moment in time when Renee Montoya was just out of her mind with grief, dragging a dying man to paradise.
Yeah. Vic stayed dead for 13 years after this, which I think is enough.
Yeah.
For when we're talking about a comic book character.
Yeah. That's enough to sort of give that death a piece of canonicity, right? You can't really talk about the story of the question without talking about the time that he died.
I think the character who is experiencing that right now is Alfred Pennyworth.
Yeah.
Who has somehow, despite everything, stayed dead since Tom King's Batman run. And I think as much as hesitant as I am to say it, I think Dan DiDio was onto something when he was like, nah, let him stay dead. Because his death has affected every member of his family in such an affecting way.
Yes.
It's allowed all of them to grow in these ways that they couldn't when they had that figure in their lives.
Yes. Sometimes you need to give these characters a sort of jolt of the passage of time, right?
Right.
Where if this were a world where time actually passes in a way that makes sense, Alfred Pennyworth is quite elderly, right?
Yeah.
And so characters would eventually, like Bruce Wayne as a human being, would eventually have to deal with the death of the closest thing he's had to a father since the death of his actual father.
Yeah.
Right? It's a good narrative choice. But the great thing about comics is, like, in 15 years, somebody would be like, oh, let's shake it up. Let's bring Alfred back.
Yeah. A stupid thing a friend of mine said once that I've been thinking about for 20 years that makes me laugh every time I remember it is we were watching the Batman Beyond movie together, Return of the Joker. And at one point during the runtime where they're in the Batcave, he's like, hey, what do you think happened to Alfred?
I don't know, you fucking died. I don't know.
What happened to Alfred?
The old man.
The
what happened
old
to that
man?
old fucking man?
The man who was an old man 40 years before this takes place?
Yeah, what happened
I
to
don't
that
know.
guy?
Use your imagination, dude.
Oh, he just moved to New Jersey.
Yeah. He's in
fucking Bloodhaven now. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, they got into a fight. They haven't been able to make up with each other.
Yeah.
It's just fine.
Well, that's our issue. Maybe the best death scene in comics.
Yeah, I'd take that bet.
That or Hal Jordan, which is a different side of the scale, which is a very, very superhero death, but in a really cool way because comics are good. You can embrace the comiciness of comics. What makes this so good is how real it is, and what makes the Hal Jordan death so good is how just the height of superhero comics it is, as he sacrifices his body to reignite the sun. Well, maybe we'll talk about The Final Night at some point. Secretly my favorite comic event. But that's a discussion for another time. We're going to talk about Red Tornado here.
Yeah, this backup, what do you think about it?
I'm a little disappointed by the fact that, usually these backups get a art team that has a deep connection to that character. I think it's very clear they just had Phil Jimenez and Andy Lanning laying around. I would have loved to see a Todd Knock from Young Justice on this.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking, and that's also what I was thinking about the entire time I was reading the backup and what they're describing here. Because Young Justice is my primary relationship, where I got to know Red Tornado, and none of the things they talk about in here are relevant to Young Justice, and also they don't mention Young Justice in the essential storylines, despite Red Tornado being a major character throughout the entire comic.
I am inclined to blame Jeff Johns for that.
That's what I was thinking.
Did a lot to completely memory hole all of Young Justice the moment his Teen Titans kicked in.
Yep.
And the fact that at the time this is being published, Red Tornado is a major character in the Justice League of America run that Brad Meltzer is doing.
Fucking Meltzer.
Yeah.
Jesus. They shouldn't have let him do that. I think that I think in general, actually, the trend that was popular at this time, I remember around this time, they also tapped Jodi Picoult to write a god-awful Wonder Woman run. The trend of trying to tap best-selling sort of pulpy celebrity writers to write comics was misguided, and unfortunately in some ways it's gotten only more popular, making it much harder for writers that want to break into comics that haven't written a best-selling novel yet, just much harder for them.
I will say there is one instance where it really, really worked, and that was hiring the real world's Judd Winnick to do The Outsiders and Batman. He fucking nailed it, dude.
Fair. That's the only time.
Yeah.
That is literally the only time, but the other attempts were really not good at all. Like, I remember reading the very first issue of Picolt's Wonder Woman, and it became so clear to me that she had no idea who this character was.
Yeah.
Just didn't really know.
I'm pretty sure those were ghost written.
Yeah.
I can't say officially on record that they were, but I would be very surprised if Jodi Picoult, like, even looked at Wonder Woman.
Yeah. She does not seem like she has the time.
No, she's very busy. No knock against her.
They picked her not because she wrote things that were related or interesting to women. Like if they had tapped like a best-selling YA novelist, like whoever writes the fucking Percy Jackson, is that Percy Jackson? Sorry. But you know, the Greek mythology, like YA novels. If they tapped him or
Rick Riordan. Yeah.
It was Rick Riordan. Or if they tapped a fantasy novelist of some stripe, she writes like middle of the road, like woman murder mystery stuff. Yeah. It's not at all related to the things that make Wonder Woman interesting at all. She has no avenue into that stuff. And I was skeptical from the start, and then you read it and it's just dog shit. Like,
honestly,
it's bad. This
is going to sound crazy, but I think Jodi Picoult would have been more successful writing a Renee Montoya book.
I think so too. Frankly, yes. I think that is the exact kind of talent you should peg to write a book about a character who solves mysteries.
Yes.
Who wrote Sharp Objects? Hang on. Gillian Flynn. Gillian Flynn should write a Renee Montoya comic.
Yeah.
That's the kind of angle you need. She could do it. She writes screenplay, so she has the exact right skill set. She could do it, and miserable alcoholics are like one of her favorite things to write about.
Yeah. When I first played the video game Hades, all I could think about was like, man, they should do a Wonder Woman comic like this. Yeah. And then they did.
Hell yeah.
That's Kelly Thompson's absolute Wonder Woman. It's Wonder Woman if it were the video game Hades, and that's literally the
very
best.
Good sell. You are telling me this comic is really good, and now you finally sold me on it.
It's literally the best thing DC's putting out right now.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, yeah, this is Red Tornado. He's red, and he's fucking makes wind and shit. And like that's basically the extent of the backup.
I do have one thing to say. I have been revisiting that Young Justice run this week. When's the last time you read Young Justice, Gita?
It was a long time ago, and it has aged poorly.
I will say there's a reason it was so popular with the Scans Daily crowd, and it's that it's extremely good when the panels are taken out of context. It is built for a comics out of context format, because when you see that context, it becomes very clear that it's the heir to Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis's Justice League International.
Yeah, and that's also why it was a Scans Daily favorite, because that community specifically upheld Justice League International as like the pinnacle of comedic DC Comics writing.
Yeah, but like when you actually read it, there's like all this stuff about like Ben Stein being a Raja and just
Yeah, when I read it, I was at the age range to read it also. I was a high schooler. And some of the things that we loved in high school do not actually live on to be good as an adult. I'm thinking about, say, the film Napoleon Dynamite. I've been thinking about this movie quite a bit because I watched that movie like 500 fucking times when I was in high school. I did. And if I tried to watch it now, I don't know if I would be able to complete the film. I just don't know.
I like Napoleon Dynamite a lot, and that's millennial culture.
Yeah, that's a part of that's millennial culture of one kind, right? Yeah. Millennial culture to me is also peeing on a stoop outside of a warehouse in Williamsburg, pre-developed Williamsburg, because the porta potties at the New Year's Eve party were all backed up, and Ariel Pink actually never showed because he was supposed to open, but he never shows up for any kinds of New Year's Eve party. That to me is millennial culture.
One thing I'll say for Napoleon Dynamite is that I'm pretty sure the scene where he's angrily feeding an alpaca is probably still very funny.
No, the physical comedy is still amazing, but it's just the movie itself. I don't know why I liked it so much.
Yeah.
But it did mean something to me. Here, at least with Young Justice, I feel like following those characters and the rest of the comics that they appear in did actually give me something to grow with. Whereas Napoleon Dynamite, those guys didn't really go on to do anything that I found very interesting at all.
No. John Heder was in Benchwarmers, a Rob Schneider baseball movie.
The less we say about Rob Schneider, the better.
Oh, man. I have a really stupid question. What was your favorite scene in this comic?
Well, it was the crime Bible, Alex Jaffe. That's what it was.
Really?
No, I'm kidding. It was obviously the final sequence where Vic gets a little bit of his consciousness back and is able to talk to Renee before he passes. Just beautiful writing.
The pinnacle of this whole series, honestly. I think this is if I had to rank every scene in 52, I think this is the best one.
I think it's the most remembered one from most people also.
Yeah. It still takes my breath away. Not to do a play on words on the title of the thing. But yeah, it's still just as effective now as it was the first 20 times I read this comic. And there's still stuff I'm noticing about it when I read it that I didn't before. They're just like, God, I mean, we talk a lot of well-deserved slag about Joe Bennett, but he really, really brought it for this. Just like seeing the way Renee just loses and tries to cobble together her composure again and again throughout this issue. It stands out so deeply against like whatever else was on the shelf. Like it's so rare to see this kind of range of emotion, and it's so well earned. It's my favorite scene in this comic. It's my favorite scene in this series. Hard to peg anything else onto there. You got anything for the blackboard?
This is a hard issue to put things on the blackboard for, I would say, and that it is an issue that mostly actually makes you think about yourself. It does not make you think about the broader DC universe. It is an issue that actually turns that sort of level of obsessive thought onto things that can impact you more directly in the real world. The nature of death, the nature of loss, et cetera, et cetera. But I do want to know, when the fuck did Natasha get the time to make that book? Is there like a kit she has? You know,
she's been working on it behind the scenes. Man, a lot can happen in a week. I got a couple things I want to point out. I don't know if this is intentional, but there's a very Watchmen motif that recurs through this issue with like the eating the cold beans, the scientists making doomsday creatures.
Even the 9-panel grid is something that Watchmen really popularized or sort of used very artistically in a lot of the issues. This is like a formal relationship to Watchmen as well. It's interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
Every single writer on this book has a special relationship with Watchmen because they are writers in the comic book industry after the year 1986, but also because in their personal projects, they've all touched on it. And it's hard to ignore the impact that it's had on all the characters it's associated with. With your permission, I would like to just read what Greg Rucka wrote in the collected edition of 52, where he explains writing this scene of this issue.
It's very beautiful, so please go ahead.
All right. Morphine is a wonderful, terrible drug. It steals the pain and it replaces it with euphoria. It is essentially heroin in a medicinal form. It's addictive. It can kill you. But for people living with chronic pain or dying with chronic pain, it is mercy in a syringe. 4 horsemen arrive. Well, 3 of them. The 4th, we're told, already rode out before the others. The amusement park fun ride that is Oolong Island back in week 23 has become something altogether different. We've passed funny. We're on to evil now. Really, the stakes change here, and it's through Veronica Cale that we know it, her horror at what she's become a part of. The look Will gives her as she says, "Oh God, what have we made?" is another beautifully subtle bit of storytelling and confirms what we're coming to suspect. Those 300 thermometers were no mistake. Week 38, day 3 was a page I'd had in my mind's eye since the start, and unlike most pages I hold in my mind's eye, executed in reality far more elegantly than I'd ever imagined. Butterflies. I wish I could say more about this here, but for the moment all I can say is that some things honestly write themselves. We couldn't have planned it better if we tried. Keith Giffen, for all of his cantankerous, crotchety, you young whippersnappers don't know how lucky you have it manner, is a brilliant writer. He is as responsible as I or anyone for the emotional strength of this issue. In the build-up to writing week 38, I'd been keeping pretty quiet about how I planned to execute Charlie's passing. It was Keith, even more than Wacker or Siglain, who I discussed the story with, and it was Keith more than anyone who made this story work. The weeks of dementia pay off in a moment of final lucidity. The blood-stained mask and the question mark in the snow, these were all Keith's ideas. A lot of people don't realize, but when Denny gave Vic a birth name, he was naming him in part after Thomas Stephen Zaz, a prominent academic and psychiatrist. Zaz is best known, perhaps, for his book The Myth of Mental Illness, in which he argues, and I grossly simplify here, that mental illness is used by society to define and marginalize those behaviors it deems inappropriate or finds uncomfortable. Renee's declaration that she's not crazy was written in honor of that. She's dragging a dying man up a mountain in the hopes of reaching a miracle, and that makes perfect sense to her. That is a rational, reasonable course of action to her at this time, even if everyone and everything around her is screaming otherwise. The sound that Charlie is making for several pages comes from personal experience. It is a distinct sound, and those who have heard it will never forget it. It's the sound of a body preparing to stop, a vocalization made by the dying. And it is a truly awful, endless noise, so horrible and painful that when it does finally and literally terminate, one is almost grateful for the silence. These were some of the most difficult pages I have ever had to write.
Greg Rucka is an extremely talented writer.
Goddamn, Greg, come back on 52 Pickup. We'll have you back.
Let's just talk about anything.
Let's just talk, Greg.
How you doing?
Let's just talk.
Let's just hang out.
Yeah.
God, we are blessed that this story exists. I've often thought that as an artist, what you really only need to worry about in your career is making one really great thing. And Rucka has done a lot of things that are great, but we're so blessed that this narrative, this storyline is something that he got to see through to the end.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about Greg, we've talked about how Gotham Central ended. And how, it wasn't necessarily canceled. He was allowed to keep it going on his own terms, but he chose to terminate it rather than do it without Ed Brubaker. And the way he was able to channel that story into this next project is something that's just such a rare gift. I'm glad it worked out this way. Sometimes the weirdness of the comic book industry breaks in our favor. Many times it doesn't. Many times these big events get in the way of a storyline, but it shows that a really talented writer can twist it around to bolster it by defying everything your editor told you the comic was supposed to be.
That's right, guys. Lie to your boss.
It'll work
out in your favor every time.
The one thing I have heard from every single writer and artist of comics I have ever spoken to, when I have asked them how they got away with some crazy thing, every one of them has the same answer. And it's that it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. Just do it.
Just fucking do it. No, that's so true in almost every creative endeavor, even ones that don't rely on internecine interactions between different specific characters that are being managed in an enormous web in a shared universe. Just fucking do it.
Just do it.
Literally sit down and do it. Don't ask for permission to do it.
Do it, you coward.
Just do it.
Do
it right now. If you need permission to do the creative thing that you've been trying to do, this is me, Gita Jackson, right here, right now, telling you to fucking do it. Go do it. Turn this podcast off and do it now.
I am not giving you my permission, but the point is you don't need my permission. You don't need anybody's permission.
Just do it.
Just fucking do it.
Just do it. We need more art in the world. We need your freaky artistic creation. Just do it.
It's time to ask the questions.
Let's do it.
We're the only ones left. The real one died in the snow, and the other one hasn't figured out what she is yet. But we know. So for now, it's just you and me, Gita. We're the only questions you got. And you can reach us by emailing us at 52mailbag@gmail.com. This week's question comes from Terry. This is one that I'm pretty sure is just for me. But
no, this is absolutely a Jaffe question. I have no response to this.
Hi, Gita and Alex. I was hoping I could enlist your help on a really specific mystery that's haunted me for years. Egg Foo is one of the weirdest aspects of Wonder Woman's old rogues gallery, but I'm trying to dig even deeper. Deeper than the Duke of Deception. Deeper even than the Blue Snowman. As a kid, I had a really old, perhaps Golden Age, issue of Wonder Woman, and two memories of it haunt me like a dream. She was fighting a set of men, brothers, in star-spangled suits. And in the issue, she mentions she loses her Amazonian powers for one day of the month. Do either of you know what comic this was and or why her powers operated that way? I know she had other limitations like losing her powers when bound by a man or going berserk without bracelets, but this felt so arbitrary. Anyway, I feel like Rip Hunter at the blackboard trying to find this comic. May the glory of Gaia be with you, Terry. Terry, obviously I know what this comic is.
Number one, I just gotta ask, they gave Wonder Woman a magical period?
That's a good question. And that's probably why Terry remembers it that way. And that's also probably what Robert Kanigher was doing, because despite writing Wonder Woman for 22 years, there is a deep misogynist current throughout that entire run. It's truly a dire
That's very
time.
funny. And it's only someone who is a misogynist that would use losing your powers as a way to sort of metaphorically reference the menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
Which, to me, as someone who has a nascent interest in the occult and magic, that clearly is a symbol of being even closer to magical forces.
Right.
Like tides from the moon. That's not only a person who really hates womanhood would make them be like, oh, would make it not be a boost to her powers once a month rather than a dissolution of powers.
I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of this fucker, but Robert Kanigher literally looks like Bob Cobb from the Church of Slack. Just like the white dude with a pipe in his mouth. Basically Will Magnus.
That's very, very funny.
But yeah. The thing about Wonder Woman is that there was this deal with DC Comics where if DC ever stopped publishing her for even a month, the rights would revert back to the Marston estate. So they kept Wonder Woman on life support for decades without really knowing what to do with her, just letting Robert Kanigher do whatever and come up with whatever crazy bullshit he had.
Okay, I just Googled him, and you were not fucking kidding at
No!
all. He looks like a cartoon of a 1950s patriarch.
He looks like clip art of your dad.
He looks like Professor Utonium. It's crazy.
He looks like Father from Kids Next Door.
God, he does look like a woman that look like a man that would call a woman hysterical.
Yes,
like, that's just what he looks like. I'm sorry, the vibes are just fucking awful.
He's the guy, the kind of guy who calls it the monthlies.
Yes, God.
Yeah. So Robert Kanigher, who is the most prolific writer in DC history, because he did basically all of DC's war comics, and he also did Wonder Woman for 22 years. Just did a bunch of random bullshit where, like, he would famously not explain anything he was doing. And there was this story in 1959 where Wonder Woman wakes up on June 19th, and she's like, June 19th, that's an important date for some reason, but I can't remember why. And then this, like, giant shows up and starts attacking the city, and she's like, oh yeah, that's the one day a year I lose my powers. Never any explanation. It's just, oh, one day a year, Wonder Woman doesn't have powers. And it's something that Kanigher would return to in his last issue in 1968, Wonder Woman number 176. This time it was June 18th instead of June 19th, because God knows Robert Kanigher didn't fact check his own comics, and he had been doing this for 22 years, where this set of star-spangled triplets, the Star Triplets, all show up having ingested this potion that made them super strong, all trying to be like, I want to marry Wonder Woman. No, I want to marry Wonder Woman. So Huey, Dewey, and Louie, Captain America, are all fighting Wonder Woman and each other for the right to marry her. And this all happens to go down on the one day a year she loses her powers. And it was only after this control of Wonder Woman was given over to Denny O'Neil, which was a whole different controversial thing. But it was the start of getting her in a less bonkers place. Like, Denny gets a lot of flack for his run on Wonder Woman where he took away her powers and gave her a job at a dress store. But believe it or not, it was a much needed change in direction from the weird bullshit Conacher was doing with her for 20 years.
It's very funny. I was trying to look over some of this history quickly so I could just ponder it while you're explaining this interesting facts. On the Wikipedia page for the depictions of Wonder Woman throughout the year for the Silver Age Conacher run, literally 2 sentences.
Yeah.
There's not a lot to say.
Because it's unreadable.
It's really funny.
There's a whole bunch of stories in that run where you get like a team up of Wonder Woman's adult self, her teen self, and her toddler self all just working together. And it's never explained how this is like a thing that could happen. It's just 3 Wonder Women.
I don't want to talk to my toddler self. Also, like, what the fuck is my toddler self going to do for me? I like purple. Okay, go to bed, kid. Your adult self has got some shit to deal with.
You want to ask me if Robert Conacher knew what a child sounded like or how they talk?
You know what's really funny
I bet you can guess the answer.
Relatedly, only slightly relatedly, but it just made me think about it. So in Sailor Moon, famously, Sailor Moon's daughter from the future comes to visit her, and it's clear that Takeuchi, the mangaka for Sailor Moon, learned how to draw women through drawing fashion sketches, which have a very specific and particular way to be drawn, and don't always translate into childlike forms. So Chibiusa, please Google this, just manga Chibiusa. Chibiusa has the proportions of just a short adult for the entire comic, and it's very funny.
Oh, that's great.
She just doesn't know how to draw a child and made a child a central figure in her comic. It's hilarious.
Like, don't be drinking anything if you look up a picture of John Byrne drawing Scarlet Widow's children. Scarlet Witch. I don't know, Marvel.
It's fine. They're either witches or widows in Marvel comics. That's really all you gotta say.
You know, that's the dichotomy of our patriarchy. All women are either witches or widows.
Wow. I'm going to end the podcast now.
Yeah, okay. Are you ready for that?
Fuck off. 52 Pickup is an Aftermath production created by Gita Jackson and Alex Jaffe and edited by Esper Quim with original music by John Aaron. Hosting for 52 Pickup is provided by Insert Credit. The views and opinions expressed on this show are solely those of the show's personalities and do not reflect those of DC Entertainment or Warner Brothers. Please rate and review our show wherever you can and send your questions and comments to 52mailbag@gmail.com. Never stop reading comics.